Hello everybody, welcome back to the workshop. So in this video, I'm going to have a fun time forging, and I hope you'll have a fun time enjoying watching this video, making a garden hose reel. Now, this is an actual real reel. I guess I should call it a hose hanger. I've been needing one since last summer. I've been meaning to get around to it. And so in this video, we're going to actually do that. So this way I don't go a whole nother summer without being able to have a place to hang up my garden hose. So I'm actually going to be shortcutting and chumping out instead of making an entire piece from scratch. I'm actually going to use a useful piece that I have laying over my scrap bucket, and I have had for years now. I've had this in my scrap bucket probably 4 years. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to make something out of that someday. And now today's the day. So it's been a while. If I can find the video where I made this finial, this decorative forge welded together finial, I will link that up down in the description down below and maybe put a card up here so you guys can go watch that if you want to see this end being done. Like I said, it was a while ago and this has been sitting in my scrap bucket ever since. So this is what I'm going to be using. It is a bit of 1/4 by 1 inch flat bar stock. I don't know on the length, it's probably 2 feet long. So in metric, I'm not going to give you the length. Metric, that's like 6 mil by 25 mil bar stock, and then the length is whatever. It could be longer, it could be shorter, just depending on your own application. But I'll be starting with this and bending this into basically a hook shape. And then I'm going to take a note out of John Switzer book over at Black Bear Forge. I'll put a link to his video where he made a garden hose hanger as well. I'll put a link to his video. You can go check him out and subscribe. A great channel to be a part of. And I'm actually going to be using a large flat piece of steel to broadly disperse the weight of the garden hose over. So this way it doesn't cut into the garden hose and develop kinks. That's kind of the biggest thing with garden hoses. No matter what type of garden hose you get, eventually they kink. If you put them over some tight hook, they will kink up, and then you'll always get kinks in those areas. So I want to avoid that as much as possible. So I'm going to use a bit of 1/8 inch plate, or 3.5 mil plate, if you will. And then this is roughly about 12 inches long and about 6 inches wide or so. So we're going to end up probably working on the hook portion first. We're going to get this heated up. We're going to get this bent around into a hook-like shape. And then we will move on to actually doing this plate and riveting it all together. So it ought to be a good time, ought to be a lot of fun. We'll get this first part in the fire, get it nice and hot, and I'll be right back with you once it is, and we'll get to forging on it. Okay, the first step in this process, we're going to go ahead and fishtail this thing out on the very end, because we can't leave it plain, can we? So I'm going to go ahead and fishtail that out real quick. My hammer is not hitting on the anvil. I'm keeping it off the anvil. Once it starts getting thinner and I'm working out the fishtail, I'll take it closer to the edge of the anvil. And now we've got that mostly spread. I'm going to take one more heat to planish that end up. There we go, nicely planished. It should have a bit of a sheen to it. I'm going to take a quick moment and just dress the fishtail over the horn of the anvil, just to make it a nice, even, uniform shape. On the edges. Get a little straightened up here. It's important to do all this before we scroll this up. So there we have it. Very nice. Okay, now we're going to scroll it. We're going to put it over the far side edge of the anvil. We're going to start working that curve to ourselves, working in the middle of the fishtail, then out to the corners to give it a little bit of a curvature, and keep tweaking that bend until we've got something that looks pleasing to the eye and that is correct on both sides. So we've got that nice little arc to that fishtail. We've got enough heat in here that we can go ahead and push a little bit more out and curve that up just a fuzz more. You could leave this as we're just getting that straightened up. You could literally just leave this nice and fishtailed over. You don't have to scroll it up extra, but I've got extra hook length that I don't end up needing. So I'm just go ahead and scrolling a little bit this out the opposite direction just to shorten my bar up a little bit. And it's still very decorative. So there we have it. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and bend this up. Just gonna use my hammer. Don't really gotta hit anything. I'll use my hammer to help me push this and bend this thing around. Now, I don't want to go too tight here, and in fact, this is probably just a little bit too tight in this area. I actually want this to bend a bit more, so I want to have a nice big gradual bend through here. So that's enough for the first go round, the first bend. Got another good heat on it here. Again, I'm going to use that hammer to kind of just push it around where I think I need it. True everything up. On the anvil. Make sure that everything's sitting right and tight, nice and square. That's the hardest part about this whole process, is probably making sure that your hook is nice and true. That means it looks right. It's not twisted one way or the other as you go around that bend. If that looks good, we can brush it down, and that portion can be done. Okie doke. Get this set up. I'm going to have one about right here. Touches the anvil, flip it over. All the way to the anvil again. That slug is basically punched out. I can go over the hardy hole here or Pritchel. Either or, get it close by one of the corners and pop out that slug. Nice and easy peasy like that. Okay, so there's the first hole. There we go. I want to hammer on this to make sure everything's still squared. Everything looks okay. We don't want anything out of the ordinary. Now we've got our two holes in there. Just like that, easy peasy. Quicker than drilling it. Now go ahead and brush this up real good. Again, we're at a lower heat. So that makes that nice. Okay, so now I'm over at my fly press, and I'm going to be using a tool that I got from Blacksmith Supply, and I'll actually be using this spline punch, if you will. And what I'm going to be using this for is I'm going to be using this to create a decorative edge border, and I'll show you how that comes out here in just a second. So I'm going to bring this thing out. Why a decorative edge border, you may ask? Well, I just thought it would be fun. That's why. It's a pretty simple thing to do. Doesn't take a boatload of time. And it adds one of those little surprising details that maybe you're just not expecting when you walk up on a piece. All right, starting that little decorative edge bordering. Get it hot again. Again, this is just a fun little stamped border. I thought it would be a neat thing to do with this spline, punch. Again, from Blacksmith Supply. And just as a full disclosure, Blacksmith Supply did send me this punch free of charge to play around with the fly press and do some different things. So just be advised, I did get this for nothing other than my time to use it in the shop. So thank you, Blacksmith Supply, for supporting the channel. Just using this to kind of crisp everything up while it's cold. It's a good time to add a little extra detail. This is a 6-ton fly press after all, so you could do quite a bit of squeezing on it while it's cold and really crisp up that detail. So I'm going to do that to the other end as well. Okay, now that I got both ends done, I'm going to go ahead and bevel the edges a bit. Just take off the factory cut, or should I say my plasma bed cut edge, just to give the edge a little bit more look to it. A little bit more of a forged look. Bring it to this side of the anvil so I can work on that edge a little bit better. Again, just doing a small bevel, just ever so lightly. Not focusing on it to be very even or symmetrical. It's just to give it a little bit of a forged bevel to it. And it'll also help as a drip edge for runoff. Okay, I've almost got the one half of this plate heated up hot enough for me to do what I need to do. I'm going to use a rawhide mallet, and I'm going to use this portion of my swedge block. Now, if you don't have a swedge block at home, you can do this just as easily over across 2 points. So if you can open up the jaws of your vise up wide and hit between them, that's fine. All you're trying to do is create 3 points of potential contact. So you have 2 points that the piece rests on and a hollow in between that your hammer makes the 3rd point of contact with. Dump this off. I'm also using a glove on my hammer hand because that plate puts off an insane amount of heat. And work to both sides and get a nice even curvature into this piece. Okay, I've got one end nice and hot, and I'm going to start curving it over the horn of my anvil. Again, I'm going to use the rawhide mallet to start driving this down and applying a curvature to this piece. I'm also going to take this time to kind of flare out my edges a little bit. And you can see how that already starts to squat out, right? So that's what I was talking about. It's going to want to do that on you naturally. So that's why we anticipated that with making this extra tight together to begin with. Because that compound curve, it doesn't like to do that. I keep this nice and tight in this area, just behind it. Now I got to heat up back further and keep curving this thing. Okay, now that we've got that plate to its final form and it's nice and curved, I've got it all clamped up to the actual hook portion that's going to screw against the wall of my house there. And now we need to drill some holes in it to put some rivets in this and rivet this together. If you're not comfortable with riveting work, you could always just add a couple little tack welds on the bottom side of this, and there's no harm, no foul for that. I do suggest, however, you put them in the least conspicuous location possible. That way it doesn't detract from the overall look of the rest of the piece as far as aesthetics go. But I'm going to go ahead and do rivets just because I like doing rivets. Now I've already center punch marked some marks where I want to put my holes in at. And so that's what I'm going to work at now, is getting some holes drilled in this strap and in this piece. All right, got that clean through. Now I'll move on to this next portion. Okay, so we've got all the holes drilled. Now over to the horn of the anvil. We'll put some rivets in it and affix this plate to this hook. Okie doke, I've got some 1/4-inch rivets here, just little domed head rivets, and I'm going to actually put those in from the inside, facing to the out, if you will there, and then I'm just going to go ahead and set the first one straight down. There's the first one set straight down, nice and tight. We'll go ahead and put the second one in through the hole. Hopefully get that to balance nice and even. If it doesn't quite line up, you might have to do some adjustments, a little light tapping to get things to go down just right. Let's kind of shift it out a little bit. About this other one. Ooh, we are just so close. Let's see here. There we go. There we go. That's nice and riveted on. And now for the last one. Get that established, get it close. There we go. Just driven on nice and tight. Set this one on. Set that one on. And there we go. All riveted together. Okie doke. So there you have it, folks. That's how easy it is to make a garden hose hook or hose reel. It's not really a reel. Reel implies cranking. It's more of a hose hook, if you will. So this little curvature, this type of section here, if I had to do this over again, just as some final thoughts, I might have actually curved it first and then went ahead and tried to pie the side, taco the sides a little bit. It might have been a little bit easier to control in that result. Either way, it's going to end up wanting to straighten out the previous curvature regardless. So you're going to have to go back and forth and fight with it a little bit. I did take an extra heat or two off camera to kind of just straighten out some of the wonkiness after we got this formed in order to get it to this stage that you see it right now. And it's not perfect, but it's okay. It's a forged item, and it's gonna be hanging a hose, right? If you want it perfect, go ahead and make it perfect. But for me, I'm just satisfied with the way that it'll work, and it'll hang up my garden hose. So what's next? So the last part of this process, I'm not going to end up showing. I'll show you the finished result once I get it all done and it's hung up on the house here. But basically, it's just wire wheeling, getting this all cleaned down, and then coating it with paint. So that's why I'm not going to show a whole lot. There's not a whole lot to say about it. Wire wheel it down real well, or pickle it, or sandblast it, whatever is your flavor of the day there, and then spray paint it with something that'll protect it outside, and that could be whatever you like. Some people might even powder coat this. This is a small enough item that somebody might be able to use their oven and bake on a powder coat of some sort. But I'm just going to use probably some Rust-Oleum black paint, paint primer combo, and spray this thing down and hang it up on the wall. But anyways, that's it for today. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Thank you to all of the channel members that support this content. Couldn't do it without you. If you'd like to be a channel member, you can click that join button down below this video here. Or if you want to support in a non-monetary way, why don't you hit that subscribe button and that like button? I greatly appreciate it. So thank you so much for watching. God bless, and we'll catch you on the next one.